12 awesome weapon mods in Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 7 and beyond. All of the mods in this video are available right now in the in-game mod manager on PC. It would not surprise me if in the future some of these become available on console and Mac as well, so for you console players, make sure to keep your eyes open for these. Frostmourne, Blade of the Lich King by Skurs 1 will let you absolutely blitz your way across Faerun, living out your wildest Lich King fantasies. There's no doubt at all that this one is overpowered, granting you access to a +3 weapon with various super buffed spells right off the bat. But there's also no question that it's fun to play around with. First off, what do you get when you download this mod? A Frostmourne chest will be added to your tutorial chest, which you can summon using the Cheater's Ring. I will leave a link to my Cheater's Ring video in the description of this one. I highly recommend that mod also if you're looking for stuff like this. Anyway, once you've summoned in the tutorial chest, you can loot the Frostmourne chest and get 8 different swords with very similar names. You are going to have 4 two-handed greatswords. So basically, these are separated into Skin A and Skin B with regular and unholy variations of both. The other 4 swords in the chest are long swords, which means they can be dual wielded if you want to turn up the badassery a bit further. If your intention is to dual wield 2 swords that are exactly the same with the same skin and the same attack damage, you are going to have to summon the tutorial chest again and loot another set of Frostmournes. Luckily, that is very easy to do. You're also going to get a number of passive buffs just for equipping any version of this Frostmourne sword, so let's take a look at what they actually give you just for putting them on. You're going to be permanently armed, which means that you cannot be disarmed while you're using this weapon. That's fantastic. There are certain things in the game that can disarm you, and it friggin' sucks when that happens, especially if your weapon is this powerful. You don't want to be dropping it on the ground. Dauntless gives you can't be frightened and cannot be afflicted with other emotion-altering conditions. Ghostly Recoil states that when a melee attack hits you, the attacker receives 1 to 6 cold damage and is sent reeling for 3 turns, which means that they have an attack roll penalty for multiple turns, making them even less likely to land further hits on you in the future. And Craterous Wound states that whenever you score a critical hit, you will deal an additional 1 to 6 force damage. Force damage is fantastic in this game because pretty much nobody is resistant to it. It is extremely rare for that to happen. So this is one of the most reliable sources of damage you can possibly find on gear or items in the game. And then you get access to a couple of ridiculously powerful spells as well. Let's take a look at those real fast. Glacial Onslaught is a giant frontward frost slash. Deals cold damage and leaves an ice path on the ground. Chaos Bolt is essentially a gigantic explosion of necrotic and force damage. It will actually leave holy fire on the ground, which deals 1d6 radiant damage per turn to anyone who's standing in it. It knocks back targets that are within the area as well. And lastly, we have Apocalyptic Roar, which is a very, very wide radius psychic attack. You can see the edge of the circle over there, so huge freaking area of effect we're talking about here. It hits all enemies in the area and no friendlies, deals a bunch of psychic damage, and heals you for the amount of damage that it deals. The smites you get once per short rest. Chaos Bolt and Apocalyptic Roar are once per long rest, and then Glacial Onslaught, the Ice Slash ability, is also a short rest cooldown. So you don't have access to these things on every single fight, but they are so friggin' strong, and the built-in passives are so strong that you basically are gonna still be stomping your way through this game. No questions asked, you're gonna be overpowered as hell if you're using these weapons. Alright, let's take a look at Apocalyptic Roar. Boom. It killed them. You can fear them, hit them for psychic damage, and drain a bunch of health from them. So yeah, you can't argue with results like that. While we're talking about this, I want to mention another mod that was made by Skurs 1. This is basically the same exact mod, okay? Except instead of being the Lich King sword, Frostmourne, it is Dante's Rebellion sword from Devil May Cry. The abilities you have access to are basically the same. We've got Apocalyptic Roar, Chaos Bolt, which is the same deal, big ol' explosion, and you can see on this version of it how it's showing that it's going to knock things backwards. When I targeted the other one, I kind of aimed it off in the distance where nothing else was around, but it blasts everything away from where you cast it and then leaves this holy fire, which deals radiant damage per turn, which is very nice. We've got our smites, Unholy Smite, couple different smite skills. They're both very, very powerful still. Pretty much the same deal. Instead of dealing cold damage with your backlash ability, now it deals fire damage. Everything that is cold centric on the Frostmourne sword is fire centric on this one. So instead of leaving a path of ice, we're leaving a path of fire. But other than that, it's essentially the same exact weapon. So if you want to be the Lich King or if you want to be Dante, Skurs 1 has got you covered with both of these mods, and I think that the author did a fantastic job with both of these. You get the powerful version, you get the weaker version, you get the one-handed version. There's no other skin for this one, so you only get 4 swords rather than 8, but same deal. If you wanted to dual wield 2 swords that were exactly identical, you would have to summon 2 versions of the box, which is no problem. Just use a cheater ring, summon the box, get your swords. Did somebody say Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker? I think I heard somebody say that. When you download this mod by Skurs 1, you will get access to a few different forms of the legendary sword, Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, from World of Warcraft. For anyone who isn't aware, this was a super hard to get weapon back in vanilla WoW, and you had to farm up crafting materials that were nearly impossible to get. So only a few people on a server would have access to this sword, and it was a big deal if you had it. It was also famously one of the best tank weapons in the game for a very, very long time. So don't feel bad about using this with a sword and board build, but let me just go ahead and tell you, if you're using this thing, your build is not really going to matter. You're going to be so overpowered, it's ridiculous. Let's take a look at what it has. First of all, you have a ridiculous amount of built-in damage, as you can see, just right into each swing. You have additional chance to crit, and also, if you roll a 2 or less on your damage roll, it re-rolls the dice, and then that's essentially the same thing as having Great Weapon Master built in, which is fantastic. When you deal damage using this weapon, you instantly gain 2 lightning charges, and when you deal thunder, lightning, or radiant damage, it inflicts 3 turns of reverberation on the targets. So anyone who knows anything about lightning charges and reverberation stacks knows that both of those 2 things are outrageously overpowered as well. The weapon comes out of the box at +3 on the weapon enchantment, and you get access to a couple of cool skills. First of all, this attack right here is not what you probably think it is. This is a cleave attack. You can attack up to 2 people, and it can potentially throw them off balance for 2 turns. It's going to deal lightning and thunder damage as well, so it will also give you lightning charges and stack reverberation on the target when you hit them with it. Rapid Slash attacks 4 times in a row with this weapon. So that was 1 action worth of damage right there. So as you can see over here, this did a ridiculous amount of actual hits and caused way more damage than anything else you should be doing at this level. So it's definitely overpowered for sure. You can also do Lightning Bolt. Point to an area you can see and call forth a lightning bolt to strike it, possibly daze targets that are caught in it. Well, let's see what that is. I'll cast it right on Zalk. Cause lightning damage, thunder damage, and reverberation stacks. Now let's go over here and use this cleave. So you have a super powerful bonus action attack built in that will also apply multiple debuffs to the target when you land it. And then for the final cool trick that this thing gives you right off the bat, Lightning Strike allows you to teleport to a target and do a friggin' ridiculous amount of damage and potentially stun the enemies in that area. And these things recharge on each turn, so you can just do these spells whenever you want, basically. I'm gonna try to hit him. See if I can stun him. Stunned. And then I'll hit him with the cleave. You're definitely not going to be having a fair playthrough of this game if you're using this mod. You are absolutely overpowered, there's no question about it. Being able to stand toe-to-toe with Commander Zulk like that at level 1 just because of this weapon, that's ridiculous. That's unheard of. You are definitely a superhero if you're using Thunder Fury. Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Mjolnir and Stormbreaker by Rosprey. Both of these weapons are functionally the same, and both are very powerful. You gain damage immunity to both thunder and lightning, as well as extra damage when you throw the weapons, which will each return to your hand after being thrown. You can teleport a crazy distance, your actual jump distance is greatly increased, and you will basically be smiting and slamming your enemies straight into Valhalla. Just be careful about throwing either one of these weapons at a target that's standing too close to you, because while the weapon is in midair, you will actually lose your thunder immunity, and the thunder damage explosion that it causes will damage you if you're standing too close. You don't want to be the version of Thor that gets blasted by their own weapon. That's not a good look. Lotr Fellowship Weapons by Rosprey. This one allows you to roleplay as the various different members of the famous Fellowship of the Ring. Each of the items in this mod have unique passive effects based on the character they're supposed to represent, and I think the mod author has done a fantastic job of capturing the spirit of those characters in their respective weapons. It's also worth noting that the weapons in the mod are very powerful, but they're not nearly as game-breaking as some of the others on this list. If you just want access to a set of very powerful weapons you can use for the entire of the game, but you don't want to be one-shotting bosses necessarily, this set would work just fine for that. The Staff of Orcus by Rosprey. This one is the complete opposite of what I just said. This friggin' staff is OP as hell. Nothing about the staff is tuned with fairness in mind. You're gonna get immunity to multiple damage types. Your intelligence and constitution are both going to be set to 20 automatically. You're going to get an outrageous amount of melee damage if you just run up and hit somebody with the staff. And you're going to get a bunch of passives and spells that make you the world's best necromancer. This staff is basically for a solo run where you want to roleplay as the biggest badass in the whole place, no questions asked. Excalibur by Rosprey is another very overpowered weapon you can use for a paladin or warrior of light style character. You will be dealing absolute tons of radiant damage to all the bad guys, with 2 extra scoops for any undead and fiends who are caught in the crossfire. You'll have advantage on all attacks, so you're going to be bringing the justice like a relentless avenger, a revenger. I couldn't find the built-in command spell anywhere in my spell list, even through the search function. So I'm not sure if that part of the mod is currently broken, but even without it, this sword is outrageously powerful. The Ruby Rod of Asmodeus by Rosprey. Alright bro, this is getting crazy now. This staff is probably the most OP thing on this entire list. It will automatically set 3 of your main stats to 30, which is literally god tier in Baldur's Gate 3 lore. You'll get fire immunity, Devil's Sight, your spells will be easier to land, and you're going to be healed when targets fail saving throws against them. The most important part is the list of spells that the staff itself grants you access to. You can blast a huge line of acid or lightning in front of you, a giant cone of cold, a huge fireball, or you can perform a massive heal and summon a globe of invulnerability for you and your teammates to regroup within. But let's be honest, you won't need any teammates if you're using this staff, and if you have any, you're probably going to be blasting them to smithereens on accident. This thing is ridiculous, and I love it. The right hand of God and The Left Hand of God by Purple Wallery. Both of these are pretty basic, but game-breakingly powerful weapons. There's nothing super fancy, but you are going to be piling bodies with either one of these. It's going to be very hard for you to miss hits with either one of these because of the enchantments they have, and the built-in damage is just crazy. You're going to be one-shotting people left and right. Miseria Greatsword by Pommel Strike. This is a beautiful-looking sword mod, and after having messed around with it for a few minutes, it definitely adds a fun little mini game to your combat situations. First of all, it's very strong. At +3 right off the bat, landing hits will heal you, but landing crits could actually make you and your enemy drop to the ground in a fit of laughter. Landing crits also allows you to attack again with a bonus action though, so it's still something you want to do. You gain access to some very great weapon abilities like Cleave and Heart Stopper, but also a few that add various elemental effects to your next attack. So the name of the game when you're using this weapon basically becomes, how many elemental effects can I add to my next swing? And then you're going to have to play around accidentally crowd controlling yourself. I definitely recommend checking it out, and absolute kudos to the artist who made the sword model for this one. It looks fantastic. Mana Flare Magic Aura Weapons by Insight is a unique mod that adds glowing particle effect fist weapons so you can play as a true Spellblade character or some variation of a magical monk. There are shields, which grant you resistance to their respective element, as well as a reaction ability which can knock enemies prone when they attack you or a nearby ally. Fists that knock enemies backwards a few meters when you land a hit. Fists that debuff your enemies against your spell casts, and fists that allow for a ton of attacks per turn if you dual wield them. It is very important to note that these fist weapons will use your character's spell casting stat to determine their damage. They truly are for a spellblade or spellcaster character. Your fighter is going to have trouble landing many hits with these if they're sitting on 8 intelligence, as you can see here. And ladies and gents, that's going to do it for this one. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about the mods that I've showcased in this video, and what other weapon mods or what other categories of mods would you like to see covered in the future. Thank you all for watching. Join us on the Discord if you want to nerd out about any kind of Baldur's Gate 3 or pretty much any video game related stuff. The more the merrier, you're all welcome to join. But as always, travelers, I am glad you got to see me. Do your best to stay alive out there. Until next time, see ya.